Elon Musk has long been seen as a visionary genius, but below the polished hype cycles, rocket launches, and awkward SNL appearances lies a more complicated reality. While Musk is undeniably influential and technically savvy, his confidence-driven branding often outpaces his actual deliverables. From self-driving cars by next year, every year, to promises of brain chips and Mars colonies, Musk's bold claims frequently leverage charisma and futurism to inflate public trust and stock prices even when timelines collapse or engineers quietly panic behind the scenes. Charisma in the form of futurist language and media dominance can mask overreach, distraction, and technical limits. Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos, sold a revolutionary idea, a device that could test for hundreds of diseases using a single drop of blood. She wore a black turtleneck, channeled Steve Jobs, and spoke in a deep, calculated voice, all part of a carefully curated charisma package. Despite a complete lack of medical evidence or scientific expertise, Holmes convinced billionaires, media outlets, and even former US secretaries of state to invest. The technology did not work, but her confidence in performance sustained the illusion for years. When style overshadows substance, entire industries and lives can be misled by the illusion of certainty. Jordan Peterson rose to prominence not through groundbreaking psychological research, but by confidently tackling complex topics, from gender identity to Marxism, in YouTube lectures and public debates against people who usually don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. Despite a background in clinical psychology, much of Peterson's influence stems from his ability to sound authoritative on nearly any subject, whether or not he has the relevant expertise. His rhetorical style is combative, confident, and steeped in anecdote, and that creates an illusion of academic rigor even when his claims lack empirical grounding. Speaking with certainty doesn't always mean speaking with accuracy, especially when charisma becomes a stand-in for interdisciplinary knowledge. Hello, you stunning women on the go. Welcome back to D-Talk, your safe space to explore the 4 C's: creativity, cringe, critical thinking, and connection. And today we are diving headfirst into the wild world of the charisma bias. That sneaky little trick our brain plays on us when we mistake confidence and charm for actual competence and knowledge. You know the type. They walk into the room like they own the place. They speak like everything they say is gospel, and somehow they convince us that they're experts, even when their facts are iffy at best. It's like charisma is a superpower that can overshadow skill, knowledge, or frankly, basic common sense. So buckle up, because we're unpacking why the smoothest of talkers often get the biggest megaphones, and why that is both hilarious and extremely problematic. Let's get into it. D-Talk starts now. Okay, I popped my Red Bull. Let's get into this. We have 4 things to talk about today. The first thing is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Then we're going to talk about the dichotomy of charisma and competence. Then we're going to talk about epistemic justice. And then we're going to finish with platform culture and misinformation. So the first thing that we're going to get into is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where individuals with low ability, knowledge, or expertise in a certain area overestimate their own competence. And this happens because the same lack of skill that prevents them from performing well also prevents them from recognizing their mistakes or limitations. This effect was coined in 1999 by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, and the effect was first demonstrated through a series of experiments where participants were asked to evaluate their own performance on tasks related to logic, grammar, and humor. Across the board, those who scored in the lowest lowest percentiles consistently rated themselves much higher than their actual results. Ignorance is bliss is not just an empty platitude, it unfortunately is reality. In short, people who don't know what they're doing often don't know that they don't know. They don't know that we know they know we know, you know? Meanwhile, individuals with high competence often underestimate their abilities, assuming that others find things just as easy as they do. This creates a dangerous inversion where the most confident voices are not always the most competent, and the most competent voices are often the most cautious, reflective, and quiet. God, that's upsetting. In our social world, especially in politics, media, education, or leadership, this means charismatic, overconfident individuals may rise to influence, not because they are correct or they are capable, but because they appear certain. And that is exactly where I got my idea for today's podcast episode, The Confident Idiot. You know, if I'm gonna be vulnerable here on the pod today in this moment, I was in therapy when I said the sentence, yep, the most confident people usually are the dumbest. And I don't know if I fully believe that, but I think this idea of charisma co-opting confidence, I think that happens a lot, or at least I have a lot of those experiences. So I'm interested to see if you have those same experiences. So if you're comfortable, I'd love for you to share something with me in the comments, because I see these kind of folks everywhere, and it's not necessarily their fault. We're not assigning blame to them, but it is what I want to talk about. Like, have you ever had somebody in your life correct you on something you literally have degrees on and they've read a Wikipedia page? It's crazy. I've had it happen a lot. And think back to the times when you felt the most confident. Was it because you were the most competent, or was there a different factor influencing your level of confidence in those moments? And it begs the question, how do we balance this idea of confidence and ability? Should they be together? Should they be separate? Do you develop them separately, but they kind of play off of each other? There are so many questions that I have, and you'll probably get to the end of this episode and have more questions yourself. But I think that's a really big part of this conversation as a whole, is you're never really supposed to get to a big defined answer, right? Unless it's something simple, you should be questioning things, thinking about things. It should take you days, weeks, months, years, talking with people who agree with you, talking with people who disagree with you. I think you need time, space, energy, and not all of us can afford all of those things to everything we think of all the time. I don't know about you, but it's overwhelming in my head because I'm actually paying attention. Anyway, before I put my foot in my mouth, let's talk about charisma versus competence. So we're going to start this chapter by getting one thing out of the way. Humans are very bad at knowing who to trust, like spectacularly bad, especially when it comes to separating someone's actual expertise from how confident they sound while saying things like, trust me, I've done my own research. Sidebar, trust me, I sound confident? Wait, does that mean that I'm dumb because I feel confident right now? Ooh, it's getting a little bit too meta for me right now. It is in fact a predictable bias in how we perceive others. It starts with the halo effect. So this is a term from social psych that refers to our tendency to let one positive trait, like charm or confidence, spill over and influence how we perceive everything else about a person. So according to Kennedy and De Bruyne, the halo effect plays a major role in leadership emergence, meaning the people who rise to the top are often those who look the part, not those who actually know what they're doing. Charisma becomes a proxy for competence. And suddenly, your boss is someone who used to say synergy unironically and just literally never stopped talking. This is also reinforced by the work of Cuddy, Fisk, and Glick, who argue that our social judgments tend to hinge on two different dimensions: warmth, can I trust this person? And competence. Can this person get things done? These traits operate like two axes on a grid. Ideally, we want people who score high on both. They are warm and they are competent. But in reality, our brains are so lazy that we shortcut. If someone seems warm and confident, we often assume they're also smart, skilled, and credible. This makes charismatic people incredibly persuasive, even when they're confidently spouting nonsense like, you only use 10% of your brain, or the earth has healing frequencies, or drink the horse tranquilizer. And let's be honest, this is not just about individual psychology. It's a cultural issue. Western societies, especially those of us who have been steeped in the hot, scalding, disgusting tea of capitalism, reward certainty, performance, and polished delivery. If you speak with conviction and use a ring light, I forgot that's in here. It's not a ring light. There's many lights, but none of them are in a ring. You're more likely to be believed than somebody who humbly says, I think it's more nuanced than that. It is quite tragic, actually, and social media amplifies this distortion. As Marshall McLuhan once said, the medium is the message. So TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram elevate content that's short, punchy, and emotionally compelling, not necessarily accurate or informed. Sundar points out that in digital contexts, people judge credibility largely based on visual cues and interface design. So someone who's attractive, articulate, and well lit may be seen as more trustworthy than a qualified expert in poor lighting with a less confident delivery. God, that's upsetting. And hey, I'm not calling myself attractive. Just kidding, I am. But I do know that I have a confident delivery, and I also know that I'm very well lit. People might be more willing to listen to me just because of those things. And you may listen to me more because I sound confident, but I also look queer, and you're starving for queer representation, as most of us are. There are so many things and biases that play into who we actually believe, and not a lot of it has to do with thinking of the quality of the thought coming from that person. This is such a meta-cognitive topic that I'm spinning here, but we're going to get back to what I was talking about before because I have no idea where we left off. This is what we may call the TED Talk trap. When someone steps on stage with a wireless headset and starts a sentence with, "What if I told you?" Our critical thinking quietly packs up and goes home. But there's an even darker side to all of this. As Pennycook and Rand explain, our tendency to believe bullshit, which is defined as language designed to impress without regard for truth, is correlated with low analytic thinking. The more fluent or persuasive the delivery, the more likely we are to mistake it for truth. This means charisma doesn't just co-opt confidence, it can dismantle discernment. Why does this matter? It matters because when we consistently mistake charisma for competence, we end up promoting the confident over the qualified. We elect the loudest person in the room. We follow influencers who radiate certainty but have no subject matter expertise. We give power to those who are convincing and not necessarily correct. And in the process, we silence quieter voices, the ones who are actually doing the work, gripping with the complexity and saying things like, "It depends," which, let's face it, is a terrible soundbite. So in the end, charisma becomes a form of camouflage, a kind of social armor that deflects doubt and attracts admiration. But if we don't learn to tell the difference between someone who knows what they're talking about and someone who just sounds like they do, we're gonna keep falling for these confident idiots just over and over again. And I know that I cannot be the only person who has seen people get into positions of leadership and authority just because they talked like they sounded like they belonged there. They got big words. They sound confident, but they don't know. I've definitely noticed this as a teacher in so many different ways, is when I'm looking for nuance from students, from colleagues, so many people just kind of trample over it and they're like, "Oh, that's a stupid question. Of course, it's an easy answer. Here it is." And I'm just standing there kind of in a head spin. It's really hard because people want expediency and people want to be assured, and it makes sense. It's a basic human want because the unknown and the malleable can provoke anxiety, and I get it. I am such an anxious person that I'm even medicated for it. Like, I get it, but still, we don't need to have the answers for everything. And to finish off this chapter, if you're listening to this, you probably don't need to do this, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. I want us to reflect on how the white, male, or conventionally attractive people often benefit from the halo effect in all contexts. Pretty privilege, girl. I've lived with both pretty privilege and not pretty privilege. I mean, I think I have pretty privilege now. I could probably be more pretty and privileged, but I know that I get things in my life just because people find me attractive in some contexts, and I don't know. It feels weird sometimes, even though I usually accept it if it's reasonable. Anyway, let's move on to chapter 3. So now we're going to talk about epistemic justice. So now that we've explored how charisma can overshadow real competence, let's talk about a concept that cuts even deeper into who is heard and who is silenced. So this is a term coined by philosopher, my favorite, Miranda Fricker. Epistemic injustice. Epistemic injustice happens when people are wronged as knowers. In other words, it's not about being ignored or talked over. It's about having your capacity as a knower, your credibility, and your ability to contribute knowledge systematically undermined or dismissed. This form of injustice is not accidental. It's tied to social power structures that decide who counts as an expert, who is credible, and whose voice is worthy of respect. In any setting, this plays out horrifically. People who are on the margins of society, whether because of their race, gender, background, or non-dominant perspective, find their insights and expertise overshadowed by louder, less informed voices that fit the dominant culture narrative better. We see it in classrooms where students' lived experiences are ignored in favor of objective textbook knowledge. We see it in staff rooms where seasoned teachers with years of frontline experience are sidelined in policy discussions, dominated by charismatic administrators or external consultants who look and talk a good game but lack direct classroom expertise or experience. And let's not forget in the digital world where social media platforms amplify voices with the loudest followers and the most viral videos, not necessarily those with the most grounded or thoughtful perspectives. So the question then becomes, who gets to be believed and respected? Who is trusted as the credible knower and who is written off? So Fricker's work, God, I love saying that. Fricker's work challenges us to recognize this injustice and work against these structures that allow it to persist. It asks us to critically examine our own biases about whose knowledge counts and to create spaces in schools, online, and beyond where marginalized voices can truly be heard and valued. Because when epistemic injustice goes unchallenged, the result is a world not just where knowledge is distributed in an uneven way, it's weaponized to maintain existing hierarchies and silence those who might challenge the status quo. There's so much subtext in this whole episode. There's so much subtext in this whole episode. Don't we all know and collectively hate a confident idiot who co-opted confidence with charisma? Anyway, I'm fine. Imagine an Indigenous educator working in a northern community school. The teacher has spent years building relationships with students, understanding their local culture quite deeply, and developing culturally responsive teaching methods that improve student engagement and well-being. And then comes in a charismatic outside consultant, armed with flashy presentations, confident speech, and buzzwords like innovation and 21st century learning. The consultant is quickly embraced by administration because their style is polished and media savvy. Meanwhile, the teacher's grounded, experience-based knowledge is sidelined as outdated or too local. This is epistemic injustice in action, where the knower's authority is dismissed because their voice doesn't fit the dominant expectation of credibility, and the result is valuable community knowledge is ignored, and real solutions get lost in the sea of superficial hype. So, my darling, here's the challenge for you. Next time you're in a meeting, a classroom, or scrolling through your Instagram feed, ask yourself, who am I listening to? Are you giving space and respect to those whose lived experiences and expertise might look different from the loudest or most polished voices? Challenge that charisma bias by valuing substance over style, especially when it comes from voices who are often marginalized or ignored, because real progress happens not when the loudest win, but when all knowers are heard and respected. God, there's nothing I like more than seeing fricker on my works cited list. This topic as a whole is so personal to me as well, because you might watch my videos and maybe you don't know me in real life. When I am out in public or in social settings, I'm often not a loud person. I'm often quite quiet. I'm not an introvert. I will talk to anyone. I love talking to strangers in those moments where it's appropriate and all the rest, right? But the thing about me is that when I encounter a confident idiot, which is every day, we all do, I don't talk. Me personally, I don't challenge a lot of that unless there are stakes. So if I'm not involved directly in that situation, I often won't say anything. Or if I don't see anybody's safety really being jeopardized or a vulnerable person, I don't step in those moments. And I think a lot of us don't. And it's hard because when you're not a loud person, people will just trample all over you with their confident idiocy. But to be honest, it used to really bother me before, but now I actually do take quite a lot of joy in sitting back and watching it unravel in front of me and just pay attention and be present, because it stands to reason you'll be one of the only people doing so. And my favorite thing, this happens to me so much. The biggest indicator to me that somebody is a confident idiot is that, oh, that sounds so rude, but it is. I'm sorry. And it's not personal and it's not me being like judgy. I was a confident idiot for years, okay? I'm not coming from the high horse. You're taking this from somebody who has been a huge confident idiot in the past. Sometimes I still am. It's not a static thing. It can change. Anyway, one of the best ways that I personally suss out if somebody is a confident idiot is that when you ask them a question, they answer the question that they think you're asking. And it often has nothing to do with what you're asking. Like, let's say in your mind, you have a series of like 5 questions to ask somebody to get to a goal. There's something that you want to know from this person. So you've crafted a mental list of questions that you're going to ask. And you ask question number 1. And the person is like trying to figure out where you're going with it. And they'll answer what they think your question 5 is, when actually the likelihood of being able to figure out where somebody is going with something is very low. We should probably just answer the questions that people ask the first time. I get that a lot in pretty much every context, in social contexts, in like service industry contexts and professional ones. It's just super interesting to me, and it's something that I know a lot because I think it means that people aren't actively listening to what we're asking them because they're just predicting the future. It's that idea of people aren't listening to think, they're listening to respond, and it's not the same thing. Anyway, dolls, okay, let's get into the last chapter here. This is platform culture and misinformation. In today's digital age, the way we consume information is shaped more by algorithms than by critical evaluation. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter are designed to amplify what's catchy, certain, and emotionally gripping, often at the expense of nuance and complexity. And this creates a perfect storm for the charisma bias to thrive online. Take TikTok's wellness coaches, for example, charismatic personalities who deliver quick fix health advice with confidence and flair, often without credentials or evidence. They can amass millions of followers, spreading messages that sometimes clash with or outright contradict what qualified psychologists and or health experts have to say. There's a research paper here from 2018 that shows that false news spreads faster and farther than true news online, primarily because misinformation tends to evoke stronger feelings and emotions with certainty, which the algorithms amplify. This means certainty and not accuracy often determines visibility and reach. Thankfully, there's a tiny little bit of work being done in this area. So the Canadian media literacy initiatives like those from Media Smarts emphasize the importance of critical digital literacy, teaching users to recognize sensationalism, verify sources, and resist the impulse to share unverified claims. These skills are essential to combating the dominance of style over substance in platform culture. If we think of like during the pandemic, TikTok exploded with self-proclaimed wellness coaches, offering you advice on mental health, diet, self-care, and it's often delivered with charismatic energy, catchy music, and visually appealing formats when it's like, sir, I just opened TikTok and you're calling me obese. Right? Get out of here. And some of them can and do share helpful tips. Many spread oversimplified or misleading ideas such as detoxes or quick cures for anxiety. You don't need to detox, okay? You have kidneys. That's literally what they do. And you don't need a quick cure for anxiety. You need therapy and maybe an antidepressant. But I don't know. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm like 90% of the way through my master's in education with a specialization in neuroscience, so I don't know nothing, but I'm not a psychiatrist, girl, not even close. No thanks. Can't even fix my own problems. And if you contrast this with actual mental health professionals whose advice is grounded in research and nuanced understanding, but they often lack the viral appeal and reach, and the result, the voices with the most charisma and certainty gained massive influence, and the evidence-based experts struggle to cut through all the noise. So as digital citizens, it is up to us to practice media literacy with intention. Please, I am begging you. There is so much nonsense garbage out there, and it doesn't take you that long to click your way through somewhere online where you can verify if that thing that somebody is saying is true or not. And before sharing that viral health tip or emotional rant, ask yourself, who is this horse? Do you actually know this person? Have you seen this person before? Do you know their background? Are they qualified? Do they talk about this regularly? Or is this a trend that they're hopping on? And is there evidence supporting their claim? Not just evidence, but peer-reviewed evidence. That means other professionals in that same field have gone through that paper or research or fact or claim with a small tooth comb, just going through all of it and making sure that it's right. Peer review is so important. I remember learning about the doctor who published the paper in the UK, decades ago now, who asserted that autism was caused by vaccines, and that's what the world believed for like a solid while. And he faked all of his own studies. He faked it. He lied. He lied about so much that it deemed his paper not accurate at all, and he was stripped of his medical license. But please, for the love of God, go and check out that actually happened. I'm telling you that I believe that that's the truth, but could I be wrong? Absolutely. Fact check me, America. I might not know what I'm talking about. This is so circular, it's crazy. But anywho, we need to slow down, question the certainty that you hear from people online, and value expertise over style. For the love of God, like, I'm not an expert, but I do got style, and I do have things to say that I think could be helpful to a group of people. So if you like it, take it. If not, move on. We can help shift the platform culture in the way that it is right now, away from misinformation and towards more thoughtful, accurate conversations. I fully believe that. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here doing all this other stuff, okay? Because certainty is comforting. I get it. I understand. I want certainty too, but we don't always get it. So we have to be comfortable being in the unrest. We just do. I'm sorry. Go to therapy. Okay, girly wigs, we are staring down the barrel of my conclusion here. So I have a few more minutes things to talk to you about, but I just want to take this moment to say thanks for getting this far into this podcast episode. Whether you're listening on Spotify or watching it on YouTube, I do really appreciate you being here. If you liked this episode, you can check out my other 2 seasons of D-Talk. To be honest, none of them are as good as season 3 because I'm just constantly getting better all the time. But if you want a little bit of my origin story of how this came to be together here, feel free to go back to those earlier 2 seasons, but I'm very incredibly proud of season 3. So thanks for being here, and check out those other ones. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. I don't know, on Spotify. Follow me on Spotify. Is that a thing? I do have an Instagram and TikTok account, both dedicated to D-Talk. If you want D-Talk episodes in short form, you can't sit down for this long every time, which I understand. Because you have a short attention span, because you want certainty. You're the problem. No, I'm kidding. Oh God, the Red Bull hit and now I'm crazy. Okay, let's get into the conclusion. So now we have explored how charisma can overshadow competence, how epistemic injustice silences marginalized voices, and how platform algorithms reward certainty over nuance. It's time to focus on the solutions. How can we reclaim competence? How can we reclaim competence in environments that often prioritize style and confidence? First, it means cultivating cultures in classrooms, in workplaces, online, that actively value truth, critical thinking, and humility. This involves more than just calling out bad behavior. It's about embedding practices that encourage questioning, evidence-based dialogue, and the celebration of diverse expertise. Research in organizational psychology, like the work of Edmondson on psychological safety, shows that when people feel safe to express doubts, ask questions, and admit uncertainty, group decision-making and learning improve dramatically. I'm going to say that again. When people feel psychologically safe to make mistakes, ask questions, be uncertain, everything improves. Rocking myself back and forth here. Environments that reward curiosity and complexity over performative certainty allow true competence to shine. This also means investing in education that promotes media literacy, critical thinking, and self-awareness from an early age, equipping individuals to navigate charisma-heavy spaces with confidence in their own judgment. There's this project that Google did, and it was called Project Aristotle, and they investigated what makes teams effective. The standout from that study: psychological safety. A team culture where members feel comfortable being themselves, sharing ideas, and admitting mistakes without fear of ridicule or punishment. So in those teams, competence flourishes not because the loudest voice dominates, but because every member's knowledge and perspective are valued and integrated. This counters charisma bias by leveling the playing field and emphasizing collective intelligence over individual charm. It is not woke, lefty nonsense that we want to listen to everybody and be nice and kind and slow and gentle and humble with everybody that we come across on a daily basis, okay? I've lived a life of people confusing kindness for weakness, and I've had it. I'll be mean to you then. No, not always. I have less anxiety about that. That's not the point here at all. So here's your mission. It doesn't matter who you are, a teacher, a student, a manager, or just somebody who navigates daily conversations. Strive to create and support spaces where depth beats dazzle. Challenge charismatic certainty with thoughtful questions. Celebrate diverse voices, especially those who are often overlooked. Because when we reclaim competence, we don't just make better decisions, we build communities where everybody's knowledge can grow and thrive. And you know what, girly wigs? I think I'm going to leave it on the note of education is supposed to unsettle us. And in a world obsessed with competence and certainty, owning the phrase, "I don't know yet," is the fiercest act of intellectual courage. Bye-bye.